Well, we just we heard like what sounded like, I don't know, we thought maybe it was like an electrical problem because we saw sparks, and then we thought maybe it was fireworks. And then everyone was just yelling to get down. We really didn't have anywhere to go. So we all got down on the floor, and then it just sounded like it was getting louder and closer, to be honest with you. We're just all sitting there looking at each other like we're thinking that we're going to die. And a security guard got shot right in front of us. Another guy got shot right next to me. We just thought we were going to die. So I called my mom, to be honest with you. I was just calling my mom to tell my mom that I love her and goodbye. And finally, everyone starts getting up and running. So we're all just running, trying to get out of there. I was actually with a group of people that did end up in the airport and break into the airport. We were all hiding behind the hangar. And then finally, when like 10 minutes, when we felt like we didn't hear shots, we went back to get the truck, and that was just they started piling people in the back of my truck.
So you actually you were able to get to your truck, and you actually started to take the injured to the hospital?
Yes.
How many were you able to take?
5 injured, but my truck was full of people.
Oh my goodness.
One guy did pass away.
Oh, I'm so sorry for that, Lindsay. Thank you. I'm afraid we have to break away now for another police briefing. Sheriff Lombardo.
Is he ready? Where's he at?
Everybody ready? Yeah, we're live.
Yes, we're ready.
All right, well, thank you for being here. I'm here to give you an update on the situation as I know it at this point. I think it's very important for you to understand that this investigation is going to be long and contracted before we get to the bottom of everything associated with it. But it's one of the things I wanted to update you with is we have located the vehicles that I had put out in the first briefing, and we believe we're confident but not 100% sure we have located the female person of interest. So I want the people to feel confident and calm in that aspect, that we've accomplished a lot in a short period of time. Now, the number of injuries, I do not know yet, but we are looking in excess of 50 individuals dead and over 200 individuals injured at this point. I do not want to give you an accurate number and it be wrong, so subsequently that is why I'm portraying it in that manner. Now the suspect, I am going to provide you his identity at this point. His name is Stephen Paddock. Last name spelled P-A-D-D-O-C-K, with the date of birth of 4/9 of 1953. As far as his history and background, we haven't completed that part of the investigation yet, but we located numerous firearms within the room that he occupied, and that's, like I stated earlier, it's going to be a long and tedious investigation. Now we're bringing in all the resources of the FBI to assist us in this investigation, in particular to their victim witness advocates and their CSI folks to help us process the scene and ensure that we're getting all the evidence that we can possibly obtain. Now, furthermore, I want to provide you the phone number that I said I would provide in the first briefing. That number for family and friends to get an update on loved ones is 1-866-535-5654. One more time, 1-866-535-5654. Obviously, this is a tragic incident and one that we've never experienced in this valley. So what we're going to try to do is the best we can to get our first responders back on their feet and responding and conducting a proper investigation and ensure that we have the safety of this community at heart. My condolences go out to the loved ones that lost their lives and their families, and we will do the best we can to make it as easy as possible for you to get information as we know it. I think it's important for you to see the FBI, County Fire, and Commissioner Sislak behind me. It shows that we have full support of all the government entities to solve this situation as soon as possible.
Do you have any sense of motive?
No, not yet.
How many law enforcement officers lost their lives?
I don't know yet, because there's some officers from other jurisdictions that was attending the concert, so I don't have an accurate number of that yet.
Have you gotten an update on your officers that have been injured?
One was critical, but he's stable, and one of my officers was off duty attending the concert and lost his life.
Can you give any more details about the firearms that were found in the room?
No, I don't have any more details on the firearms. All we know is they were rifles, and that's all I know at this point. We're executing a search warrant on the room as we speak.
Sheriff, how are you doing? These are your guys that were out there on the ground. How are we handling this?
We're holding up, and we're going to do the best we can. And I don't want to say that's what we're paid to do. It's because nobody's paid to do what we're experiencing right now. But in my preview of the police department, they're doing a fantastic job, and we're going to have to look out for their well-being moving forward.
You said there were numerous other firearms found in Stephen Paddock's room. Was that in his home, or was that in the room?
In the room of the hotel. We have officers at his residence, and we'll be executing a search warrant there also shortly.
How does the city recover from this? I mean, moving forward,
That's a hard question to answer at this point. It's too early in the process, and please give us time so we can do a good job. Thank you, and I would provide you an update on a regular basis at approximately a 2-hour window at a time. As you can imagine, we don't get a lot of information all at once, so please bear with us when I provide you information.
Excuse me. Several people on social media are asking where they can donate blood and if they can. Do you have any idea?
The phone number that I provided, we will get that information out. But right now, I'm not comfortable providing that information because we're overwhelmed in the medical services at all the hospitals right now. But the United Blood Services has responded, and then once they get all their personnel on the ground and more people in place, we'll be able to provide that info.
So this number is for people looking for their loved ones?
Looking for their loved ones.
Are families still being directed to come here?
Yes, ma'am. There's 2 locations where they have been responding. One is at the South Central Area Command, which is in close proximity to the Mandalay Bay, and then also here. Preferably, we would like them to come to police headquarters on Martin Luther King, so they're not inundated with people responding in that area.
And the families that you're seeing coming, what kind of emotions are they going through?
All right, thank you very much. Have a good night.
More information coming in there from Sheriff Joseph Lombardo on what has turned out to be the deadliest mass shooting in American history. More than 50 dead, more than 200 injured after a gunman named Stephen Paddock started a fire on the Route 91 Country Music Festival in Las Vegas from the Mandalay Bay Hotel at around 10:08 p.m. Las Vegas time. Brian Ross, our chief investigative correspondent, as we look at the scene right there, a lot more information coming in now from the sheriff. They believe they've located the vehicles they were searching for and the roommate of the shooter.
They believe they found the companion, Mary Lou Danley. He said they are conducting a search warrant at this point in room 135 on the 32nd floor there, 125, and found a number of weapons in the room already.
And this was the scene when the shooting began. It unfolded, as Brian Ross has been reporting, over about 4.5 minutes, bursts of gunfire lasting 20-25 seconds. Then the shooter would reload, shoot again. As we've said, killing more than 50 people. Police have also said they found numerous weapons, rifles, in the hotel room on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, where they were able to take down the shooter. And this was the moment when police went in, breached the room where the shooter had been targeting those concert goers.
And sit on the suspect's door. I need everybody in that hallway to be aware of it and get back. We need to pop this and see if we get any type of response from this guy to see if he's in here or if he's actually moved out somewhere else.
The all units on the 32nd floor, SWAT has explosive breach. Everyone in the hallway needs to move back. All units move back.
Breach, breach, breach.
That was the moment the shooter taken down, bringing in our former FBI Special Agent Brad Garrett as well. The police got there relatively quickly, Brad, but not before immense carnage.
Immense carnage under 5 minutes. What's interesting about what the sheriff told us is multiple weapons. You know, that would suggest, since I made a comment earlier, it sounded like there wasn't much of a break between shots. In other words, even if you're good, it still takes a while to reload. that maybe he's just dropping a weapon, picking up another one, and started shooting again, so he had very little delay to get maximum number of rounds down range before he got caught.
And it shows the lethality of these automatic weapons.
Yeah, there's just no question about it, and particularly when you're shooting in people that really can't go anywhere. Again, much like the Orlando shooter, had them trapped in the nightclub, walked into the bathroom, even shot them in the bathroom. So you've got sort of the same thing, even though it's outside, because people are confined. And then once they panic and they start to stampede, basically, to get away, you've really got, you've really now set something up where, people are going to die that even aren't shot, because they're going to get trampled with other people trying to get by them. But the point being, they're not going anywhere, at least for a number of seconds, and maybe up to a minute or two. And that's all he needed, George.
Right, and you're not targeting people here, you're just spraying. You're
just spraying because they're literally on top of each other, so spraying, I mean, one shot could even shoot two people. Yeah, you mentioned, you interviewed somebody earlier this morning who said the person next to him got shot 3 times. Well, if he's got an automatic and he's trained one place, you're going to get shot multiple times before the weapon then moves on. But literally, I'm going to guess that most of the rounds he cranked off probably hit somebody.
Okay, Brad Garrett, thanks very much. Lindsay Davis on the scene at University Hospital in Las Vegas. We just heard Sheriff Lombardo say all the hospitals in the area are simply overwhelmed.
Exactly, and we were all just kind of trying to digest the idea that more than 50 dead and comparing that with Pulse nightclub having the 49 deceased, and now hearing on top of that that more than 200 people are injured. Here at UMC they have more than 50 of those patients, and that number had just doubled from the first time they told us to when we got the update here. We haven't heard yet an update on the critical patients. At this point they're still standing firm at 12 critically injured at this location and 2 who've been pronounced dead. But I want to give you a look at what I've been talking about here. So I don't know if you can see all the way down this street, but there is a line of police officers, and this perimeter goes around the whole hospital. And so we have been here as family members have come up, and they're turning them away. And so as you heard the sheriff just say, they're asking family members to go to police headquarters. They don't want them to come here. And so you just have to imagine how agonizing that is for the family members. You can see it on their faces as they pull up here, and they're not able to not only come to see their loved ones, but also get an update on their conditions.
And so terrifying just to hear these numbers climb hour by hour.
You have to imagine that this is just...
Go ahead, Lindsay.
You have to imagine that this is just excruciating, George, and we're not getting an update except that they're only allowing hospital personnel in here. We have seen some people who've pulled up. They're able to show, that they have cards in order to get here, and they are the only ones who are getting admittance into the hospitals. But again, the sheriff saying that they're just overwhelmed, and we heard over the scanner them asking for additional beds at other hospitals.
Okay, Lindsay Davis, thanks very much. I want to go back to our senior justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, in Washington right now. The latest news from the officials there on the scene, numerous weapons.
George, this is the nightmare scenario. I've just been talking to some federal law enforcement sources, devastated by this information, George. This is the thing that they have been fearing for quite some time, that someone would simply take an assault rifle, automatic, machine gun, and simply mow down people at some kind of soft target. In this case, a concert with people unsuspecting of what was to come. They are exercising every effort to find out what they can glean about Stephen Paddock's background. Again, so far, no ties to international terrorism. You can see from the press conference that the Las Vegas police is still the lead. The FBI will help with the evidence gathering and the forensics, but that tells you right now where the federal government's standpoint is from a terrorism standpoint. George, again, law enforcement officials have been studying these kinds of active shooter scenarios, which have been happening with increasing frequency in recent years, and they're just concerned that this could be inspired copycat situations. But again, this morning, devastated, George.
Completely devastated. So far, they have identified the shooter. It seems that they've identified and are speaking with the companion as well. She would have crucial information.
critical to talk to her, George. And again, the weapons that were found in the room, law enforcement officials are going to do a meticulous background check to see where these weapons were purchased, to see if they could glean anything that would give them some kind of sense of how to deal with this in the future. But right now it seems like if this man did not have any type of criminal background, if he somehow augmented the assault rifle, and that's one possibility that's being looked at, is that you can in some ways augment these assault rifles to make them fully automatic. That will be looked at. But if this is a person that has a limited or no criminal background, access to weapons are easy to get. And this situation from firing from a hotel vantage point high up and killing all these people is something that law enforcement, again, had long been concerned could happen. And it actually did, George.
It did. And Brian Ross, Chief Investigative Correspondent, they should be able to get an awful lot of information about this gentleman very quickly.
Very quickly, we're getting more. You know, we see he had a lawsuit filed against a hotel in Las Vegas 5 years ago that was settled in arbitration. He also held a...
Not the Mandalay Bay?
Not the Mandalay Bay. And he also held a private pilot's license. He was a pilot.
Okay, private pilot. But so far, no indication yet.
No criminal record at all. No indication of that.
And no ties to international terrorism.
No ties at all to international terrorism. Not a person who appears to have been using much of social media.
Brad Garrett, that one piece of information Brian just had, a lawsuit, sort of feeds into the idea of perhaps at some point of some sort of grievance.
No question about it. And it may well be, George, it's going to be a grievance that you and I and others would look at each other and go, are you kidding me? You would go shoot people over this? But people like Mr. Paddock are so brittle that they're just waiting or looking for an excuse to launch a horrific attack. And whatever happened to him in the last couple of days was the triggering event for him. Probably small in relative terms, but not in his mind.
What is happening in the moment for a killer like this? And I know you're speculating, but you've profiled so many killers for the FBI. We've seen the stories about Islamic terrorists, others motivated by religious fanaticism, who describe moments of ecstasy and joy in this moment. Here, you're dealing more with anger.
Well, and empowerment. That's what every mass shooter goes for. It's like intoxicating. I'm mad. I'm going to take it out on you. This is revenge. But now I've taken control. I'm controlling the situation. I'm controlling who's going to live and die. And that's really a big deal in somebody who feels powerless. Because he's going to feel powerless for a number of reasons. Employment, I mean, we can go through the list. But the point being, this is empowering. I'm taking control. I may be dead in a few minutes, but before that happens, I'm in charge.
Empowerment, but an absolute absence of any empathy.
None. Zero empathy, because he believes the people he's shooting, George, are not human in his mind. They are just people that have wronged him, that have made his life more troubling. And they need to be, we need to get rid of them. Or in his mind, he needs to get rid of them. Again, not personal. He has no clue who he's shooting. It's just like, I'm mad at society, and you're going to pay.
And you're going to pay, okay. And Pierre Thomas, you know, we don't know the motive yet. What we do know is that we are seeing mass shootings like this, not this bad. This one turning out to be, it appears, the deadliest mass shooting in American history. But we are seeing mass shootings at workplaces, at schools, at nightclubs, every single week, every single month in this country.
George, this sort of almost feels like that movie theater shooting in Colorado from a few years ago. Again, people packed in, nowhere to go, simply mowed down. And you're right. The FBI has been studying active shooter scenarios. At one point, we were averaging at least 16 a year, which meant that every month, more than once a month, that people were showing up at soft targets, at malls, at schools, at different scenarios. We all remember Sandy Hook, and just killing the innocent. And I can tell you that this incident right here will be examined from top to bottom. They will look at the shooter. They will try to determine the motive. They will look at how the weapons were purchased, because this right now is emerging as a steady, routine, chronic crisis that explodes in our faces every so often, George.
You talk to law enforcement officials every day at the federal level. What do they say they need to get a handle on this?
One of the things they're talking about is more tripwires, informing the public to, if there's someone who has a grievance and you know that those people have access to weapons, to not hesitate to call law enforcement to discuss your concerns. They're talking about more tripwires in terms of mental health, in terms of people that have issues. Now, we just had a case just a week ago where a man showed up in Washington, D.C., not far from the White House, who had a vehicle with weapons, full to the teeth with weapons. And who knows how that scenario could have unfolded. So these kind of scenarios are happening more and more, and I can guarantee you, George, this will be talked about, discussed, examined at the highest levels of law enforcement to figure out what can be done about it. Because again, as far as we know, this man had no criminal background, no significant criminal background to speak of. How do you stop something like this?
That's the point, Brad Garrett. There would be nothing that would show up to prevent this man from getting a weapon.
Of course not, George. The idea that even if you're a convicted felon, getting your hands on these type of weapons, a little bit more trouble. You can't walk into a gun shop and maybe buy it. But there are so many different ways. I mean, we've got 300 million plus firearms in this country. And I realize that's an emotional issue for people. I get that. But the ready availability of these lethal type assault weapons, unfortunately, play into people that are troubled, like Mr. Paddock. And it's just so easy for them to get their hands on them, and then we end up having these horrible conversations about mass shootings of what you just said. This may be the worst in recent years.
Assault weapons, indiscriminate killing machines.
There's no question about it.
And Brian Ross, authorities now going through the background of Stephen Paddock. That was the scene earlier this evening. So far, again, we've said no ties to international terrorism that we can see of any kind. And of course, he doesn't seem to fit that profile.
Not at all. A 64-year-old white male from a small town in Nevada, Mesquite. He had a hunting license in Alaska. He was a private pilot. He had a lawsuit that was settled in arbitration against a Las Vegas casino 5 years ago. Other than that, no criminal record, no indication. And as to the weapon, you can tell from the audio that we're hearing here, according to weapons experts, he was firing a weapon that was fully automatic. And those kinds of weapons are not easily available.
Not easily, no, they're not. So I want to go to Steve Gomez now, our consultant as well, former FBI agent. Steve, right now, according to the details we just got from Brian Ross, not a whole lot for the FBI to go on. Is Steve with us? Apparently we've lost Steve Gomez. Let me bring that to Brad Garrett. Some scant details now coming in on the shooter.
Yes, and what you're going to find, George, is that this shooter will, I'm going to guess, he's got a Texas driver's license. You know, he's lived basically what I've been able to pull up in a number of locations in the last year. His most recent address in Nevada was in June. So does that mean that he specifically went back to Nevada to commit this shooting? I don't know. I mean, he didn't pull that venue out of his hat. He went there for some reason. Now, it could be just as simple as it was a mass gathering outside, made a vulnerable target. He could really make a big statement, but we'll have to see.
But we did see that earlier this summer. We were talking about that shooting at the congressional softball practice. Right. The shooter had gone from Illinois to the D.C. area.
Correct. And that's not totally uncommon. I mean, you know, even the Orlando shooter traveled. He was in Florida, but he traveled a couple of hours to get to Orlando to commit that shooting. So the idea that they're going to move to a venue where they think that they're going to, you know, exact their revenge is not uncommon. And apparently Mr. Paddock may well fit that profile.
Right, and Brian Ross, what they're looking for now, authorities, that trigger event. What set him off?
Exactly. This was not, as Brad Garrett has said, not somebody who snaps, but for some reason, over a period of days, weeks, or months, had decided he was going to do something evil, and he did it.
He built up quite a stockpile.
Absolutely. He fired off more than 200 rounds, based on what we can hear. And police say they found a number of weapons in that hotel room, room 135, up there on the 32nd floor. He had the perfect vantage point to open fire, to spray these deadly bullets on that crowd of more than 10,000.
And as Brad Garrett was saying, it appears that he might have been simply dropping one weapon, picking up the other.
Exactly. We just don't know.
Okay, the shooting has unfolded in Las Vegas, started around 10:08 p.m. Las Vegas time. Now the deadliest mass mass shooting in American history, more than 50 dead, 200 injured. Our coverage is going to continue all through the morning here on ABC. Good Morning America coming up in just a few seconds. Right now, we want to show you some of the eyewitnesses we've been talking to all through this terrifying evening.
But we are looking at an excess of 50 individuals dead and over 200 individuals injured at this point.
Very scary. It was frightening. It was confusing. It was, you just can't even explain what happened to us.
It just started going pop, 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 pop. It just kept going, and it was nonstop. Hundreds of cops coming down.
And we heard several kind of series of pops in a row, and I first thought it was just bottle rockets going off. Like, it didn't sound like gunfire or anything. Looking around, everybody was ducking, but a lot of people thought it was just bottle rockets or some kind of little mini fireworks or something. And then we saw them yank the Jason Aldean, all the performers off stage.
I saw Jason Aldean drop his guitar, and I'm like, I'm out of here, okay?
It's one of those things that's surreal. You don't realize what's going on and how life-changing it can be just in that moment. So I'm just thankful for all of our friends getting out, and hopeful for anyone that got hurt that they have a good, quick recovery.
People still didn't understand, like, when the shooting started, that a shooting was happening. They were, like, in that frozen moment, and I was like, oh, man, I'm like, I hope these people don't get hit.
The audience on the 32nd floor, SWAT has explosive breach. Everyone in the hallway needs to move back. All units move back.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Good morning, America. Breaking news. Deadly rampage in Las Vegas. A shooter opening fire, killing more than 50, injuring over 200. That's the sound of bullets taking over the arena at a country music festival on the Strip. The shooter taking aim from high above inside the Mandalay Bay Hotel, firing rapid rounds for 4.5 minutes.
Even after we lost, it just kept going and going.
Chaos erupting, thousands scrambling, running for their lives. Trying to take cover, some hiding under the stage from the spray of bullets.
I heard just going non-stop.
The rush to take down the shooter. A SWAT team breaking down the shooter's door.
Breach.
And now, the urgent search for this woman, who may be connected to one of the worst mass shootings in American history. Our team live on the scene right now for a special edition of GMA.
Live in Times Square, this is Good Morning America.
Good morning, America. I am sorry to say it is a horrifying one. It's been unfolding over the last several hours. The worst mass shooting in American history. A gunman opened fire around 10:08 p.m. Las Vegas time on the Route 91 Country Music Festival concert there in Las Vegas. Jason Aldean was performing. More than 50 dead, more than 200 injured.
The video coming in is just unimaginable, showing the moment the concert turned horrific. Gunshots ringing out, interrupting the music. Take a listen. First, people thought perhaps fireworks. The music continued before they realized what was happening. 4.5 minutes. Multiple rounds of gunfire.
Just a terrifying scene, absolute chaos. As we said, it was at that Route 91 Harvest Festival. The shooter was on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel. He just fired indiscriminately on the concertgoers below, had several weapons, according to police, in his room, automatic weapons, and the carnage, unimaginable. Chaos continued for several hours.
And here's what we know right now. More than 50 people killed, more than 200 injured. The shooter has been identified as 64-year-old Stephen Paddock. He is now dead. Police believe he was the only attacker. They also located a woman believed to be a person of interest and his companion.
They've talked to her as well. We want to go straight to our senior national correspondent, Matt Gutman. He's been on the scene outside the Mandalay Bay Hotel for hours. He's got the latest right now. Good morning, Matt.
Hey, good morning, George. When you see that video and you hear that gunfire, you understand why the eyewitnesses we've been speaking to here called it the kill box. They were standing shoulder to shoulder with other concert goers when people began dropping. The chaos was unimaginable. People did not know. Overnight terror on the Las Vegas Strip. At least 50 dead in a mass shooting at a music concert near the Mandalay Bay Casino on the Las Vegas Strip. At 10:08 local, blasts of automatic gunfire ringing out towards the end of a concert at the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival. Country star Jason Aldean performing on set.
It sounded like firecrackers, and everybody kind of got startled for a second. 2-3 seconds later, it started again, another burst. Everybody I saw in the bleachers hit the deck.
Panic ensuing, concertgoers scattering, some hiding out in the basement of the nearby Hotel Tropicana. First responders rushing to the scene.
We need your truck. We just need to get people over to the hospital, okay?
We are looking at an excess of 50 individuals dead and over 200 individuals injured.
Then shortly after 11:20 p.m., SWAT teams zeroing in on the 32nd floor of the hotel.
All units on the 32nd floor, SWAT has explosive breach. Everyone in the hallway needs to move back.
Breach, breach, breach.
They set off an explosive device to enter the alleged suspect's room.
One of my officers was off duty attending the concert and lost his life.
At 1:30 a.m., police confirming the shooter was dead. ABC News learning he was 64-year-old Stephen Paddock, and overnight, an urgent manhunt for his companion. Mary Lou Danley, she has been located. This morning, a swarm of federal agencies, the ATF and FBI on the scene to assist with the investigation. And still, the Las Vegas Strip, one of the most trafficked places in the country, is quiet right now. You can see that there's a roadblock. People are not allowed in, and for hours there were people locked in their hotel rooms. You can see the famous skyline behind me, the New York, Excalibur, Mandalay Bay, MGM Grand, all of them shut down. Thousands of tourists closed in the room as false reports of extra shootings or additional shootings and perhaps even bomb scares forced security personnel to lock everybody down. An almost unimaginable scene in one of the most tourist places in America, folks. Just an unimaginable scene here, George and Robin.
Sheer panic. Matt Gutman, thanks very much. And Rob, we were talking to eyewitnesses all through the night. They didn't know they were safe for several hours after the shooting, even though it only unfolded in 4.5 minutes.
It took me by surprise when you were talking to them, and it was hours after, and you asked them that very question, when did they feel safe? And they said like an hour ago. And when it's such a fluid situation, and also many of us have been in Las Vegas, the hotels are so close, the cavernous sound, you know, hearing it ricocheting, and just that fear, that constant fear that they were in.
We know in situations in the past there have been multiple shooters. Apparently in this case only one, but so many victims, so many witnesses on the scene. I want to talk to one of them right now, Mike Kronk, who was at the concert when the shooting broke out. Mike, just a horrifying scene right there. Tell us what you went through it.
It was very horrifying. At first, it sounded like fireworks, and then my buddy that was standing right next to me said, "I'm hit," and then we knew it was real, and it was chaos. We got him down, and people screaming, and
he got hit right in the chest.
Just pretty horrific. My buddy got shot 3 times in the chest.
How is he doing?
Last I heard, I haven't been on the leave here, but he said he was going to be good.
My goodness. So tell us what happened in those moments afterward. How did you all get out of there?
Most people started scattering and they climbed the fence, but I had to stay with my buddy. So we got him over the fence once the fires stopped and slid him under his stage so we were safe. And then we transported him around the backside of the event.
How did you get him around? How did you stop the bleeding?
Triage. There was 3 of us carrying him, and there was a cart. And so we got him on the cart, and we wheeled that around.
So you were able to get him to the triage, and then where did you all go next, and how did you find safety?
Well, I wasn't really worried about the safety part because I was going to stay with my buddy. There were no ambulances available, really, because it was a fire zone. So we actually got 4 wounded people in the back of a truck.
I know you got 4 wounded people in the back of the truck, but not all of them made it.
No, and no one of the guys in our truck did not make it either. I carried him out of the truck, and he passed away in my arms.
Oh, I can't imagine what that must have been like, but you had the presence of mind to try to get people to safety, but this all unfolded so quickly.
Very quick. It's surreal.
And in those moments, where were your thoughts?
My first thoughts were for my buddy, you know. I mean, I wanted to make sure he was taken care of. But, you know, we were pretty much yelling at everybody to stay down, you know. That was what we needed to do.
Well, we're glad you're okay now. So sorry for your friend and all those who've lost their lives and loved ones in this. But Mike Cronk, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
When you hear those eyewitness accounts, let's get more now on the shooter. We know that he was from Nevada, opened fire from that hotel window. Police have also located a woman they believe is a person of interest. And our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, you've been on this from the very beginning.
Well, good morning, Robert and George. 64-year-old Stephen Paddock this morning. Authorities are scrambling to learn all they can about him, his background, where he's from, what might have motivated him to carry out what was a very well-planned attack using a hard-to-obtain automatic weapon. What we do know about him is that 2 or 3 years ago, he sued a Las Vegas casino and then settled in arbitration. He is a private pilot. He has a hunting license in Alaska, and he is somebody who has moved around from Texas to Nevada. We don't know much about his occupation. This morning, authorities did track down a person described as his companion, Mary Lou Danley. This is a photo she posted on Facebook of her at the Mandalay Casino Hotel when she was gambling there at one point in 2014. So this morning, authorities are trying to talk to her about what they know, what she knows about him.
And as we know, he moved around from
exactly,
and appeared to have come back to
But
Nevada.
at 64 years old, a white male, hardly the classic description of what would be called a ISIS terrorist.
Okay, Brian, thanks very much. I want to go to Lindsay Davis now at the University Hospital Center in Las Vegas. So many injured by now, more than 200 injured, 50 dead, and just terrifying moments in that concert.
Yeah, you're exactly right, George. And here at UMC, they have more than 50 of those patients are here. We're told at the last update that 12 of them were in critical condition. But again, of course, we're talking about more than 200 people who were injured here. We just heard a little while ago from the sheriff who said that, that they are just overwhelmed here at the area hospitals. Take a look.
The terrifying shots ringing out.
Like all of a sudden we hear the pop, 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 and we just thought it was fireworks. So everybody just kept kind of standing there.
Concert goers quickly learned the pops were not fireworks, but an active shooter's machine gun firing off.
We were in the VIP seat, so to the right of the stage, and it sounded like it was right on top of us.
This morning, at least 50 dead, more than 200 injured.
And my other friend was praying over bodies that were dead. It was a horrible thing.
2 of the victims, off-duty police officers there to see the concert at this country music festival on the Las Vegas Strip when it was thrown into utter chaos.
It literally felt like it just continued for 20 minutes straight. And I still wasn't even sure if it was actually bullets until one of the times we paused, our friend was like, the guy next to us got shot.
Concertgoers scrambling to take cover. A stampede sending hundreds toward the exits of an open-air arena.
Everyone was kind of slow to react, but once they did, then it was just crowds running, like pandemonium, people just like running every direction they knew how.
Those who made it outside found anything to hide behind in the madness.
Everyone like hid behind like cop cars.
One woman says her car became refuge for one of the wounded.
There was a gentleman that was shot, and he said, "Can you help me?" And so I put him in my car, and I had like 6 people in my car, people with shoes, running just to get away. And
with emergency crews quickly arriving on the scene tending to the wounded, reports of victims even fleeing onto the Las Vegas airport runways.
Now, just to set the scene for you here, police have established a perimeter outside of this hospitals and other area hospitals. They are turning away family members. We've seen the looks on their faces as they get turned away. You have to imagine that that is excruciating. They're directing family members to go to police headquarters. The only people allowed into the hospital right now is hospital personnel. George and Robin.
All right, Lindsay. Thanks very much.
Yeah, we've just heard from President Trump. He's put out his first statement on Twitter. He says, "My warmest condolences and sympathies to the victims and families of the terrible Las Vegas shooting. God bless you."
Yes. I'm going to bring in Brian Claypool, someone that you spoke to earlier this morning, who was also at the concert and ran when he heard the gunshots. Brian, good to see you again, and just remind people of what you saw.
Hey, Robin, I'll do my best. I can't even believe how many people were killed. But so I was sitting in the VIP section, and it was right near the stage, and I heard a popping sound. Thought it was fireworks. I looked up in the sky, didn't see anything. I was worried. Jason Aldean stopped singing. There was kind of a gap in his song. It was very surreal. I knew something was wrong, and then I heard shots fire, like just going off, like they were right on top of us. So I ran to the front, up the aisle, laid face down on the aluminum. I was pulling people down because I think a lot of folks didn't realize at that point that the shooting was taking place. They were still sitting up. And I have to tell you, when I was on that ground, that shooting went on for, it had to have been 20, 30 seconds.
And you almost left early,
there was
Brian?
A gap.
Brian, you said you almost left early, too?
Pardon?
You almost left the concert early?
I was, Robin. Yeah, Robin, it was so ironic. I was going to leave and take a 7:50 flight back to LA today. But what's so surreal about this is I'm on the 24th floor of the Mandalay Bay. I have the exact view of this lunatic that killed everybody. And I was looking out that window this afternoon, and I said to myself, this looks so beautiful. It's such a beautiful setting that I'm going to stay an extra night and not go back. And then I go, and people are massacred because of that same view that I saw.
And I know that you were thinking of your daughter, Brian.
Yeah. So I have an 11-year-old daughter. Mm-hmm. And what happened, Robin, is after the first round of shooting, I ran down these steps. Then a gentleman screamed, "Get in this room," because we were in open fire then. We were running north, but we were right next to Las Vegas Boulevard. I go into this room. It was like a little production area. And the hardest moment for me is I saw like 6 young women. They were maybe 20, 22. They were all crying on the ground. I was trying to be calm. But I thought at the moment, I thought of the Orlando shooting because we were in this room. We didn't know where the shooter was. We thought he was just going to jump the fence and come in that room and shoot us all. So I didn't know whether that was the right decision. So I'm thinking, am I going to die like in this room? And then the shooting stopped. I peeked out the front of the door. I peeked my head out. police officers screamed, "Go, go." And I rallied everybody out of that room, and we ran toward the back, further back of the venue. And that's where I saw 2 people shot. And then I found out an hour ago from the couple next to me that a young woman in the row, so there was a fence in front of the VIP section, then general admission. A young woman was killed, like, in the general admission section right in front of us. So, go figure.
You can't figure something like this, Brian, and I'm sure you brought those young women more comfort than you could ever imagine. And
I really tried, Robin. I mean, I really felt like I needed to do something there because I had to rise above it. I was determined. I said to myself, these girls aren't going to die. I'm not going to die. I need to get home to see my daughter. This is not happening. Not happening.
Well, we're glad that you and those that were around you were okay. Brian, thank you.
Brian just mentioned Orlando. We now know that the death toll here has exceeded that Orlando shooting in June 2016, the worst mass shooting now in American history. You see the numbers right there. Orlando back in June 2016, 49 killed, 32 killed. At Virginia Tech in 2007, 27 killed. In Newtown, Connecticut, the Sandy Hook Elementary School, the death toll here far higher, more than 50 killed, 200 injured. Want to go to our senior justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas in Washington. Pierre, you've been working on this throughout the evening as well, and we do know that the police found multiple weapons in that hotel room.
They did, George, and everyone's concerned that these appear to be machine guns that were used. Now, were they fully automated when they were purchased? That investigation is underway. Sometimes sources are telling me overnight that assault-style rifles can be augmented and turned into machine guns. That is of great concern. And, George, right now I can tell you law enforcement officials are looking at every aspect of this man's background. Every known database in the U.S. federal government is being used to check in terms of whether there are any ties to international terrorism. So far, they've found none, George. That's why you see the Las Vegas police still in charge of this investigation. And also, George, I'm being told that law enforcement officials plan to dissect every aspect of this case because we are seeing more and more mass shootings. We're averaging about 16 of these type of shootings per year. But given the fact that machine guns were apparently used in this, this is a whole new level, George.
It certainly is, boys. Such an arsenal that he had built up there. So many killed. Okay, Pierre Thomas, thanks very much.
And people are wondering how they were able to, authorities were so quickly to spot him, to get into that room. ABC News contributor and former FBI Special Agent Brad Garrett is going to talk to us about that. 4.5 minutes, and it's incredible how they were able to find them. Just tell us how that went down, Brad.
Well, the key, Robin, in every mass shooting is what the witnesses immediately tell you. So you have a guy elevated on the 32nd floor, were there people in rooms of proximity that heard it, that maybe even saw the fire coming out of that particular balcony, for example? And you take that information and you immediately, rally the police, in particular the SWAT team. And it looks like to me that they got to that particular room fairly quickly. But keep in mind, virtually every mass shooting is less than 5 minutes. It looks like this one fits that profile. But this guy, because he had multiple weapons, I'm going to guess, was able to get more rounds off than a single weapon that you would have to constantly reload. And he also had cover because he's in this hotel and he's up. He isn't like one of these school shooters or even Omar Mateen, who goes into the Orlando nightclub and is, face to face with people that he's going to shoot. The police can get to that sort of individual potentially quicker.
And Brad, it seemed like the authorities were pretty confident that they had the right room when they went in.
It was very clear, and so that's why I think they had some really good eyewitness information that's where the guy was, and maybe they had some pieces of information, Robin, about a guy that carried maybe too many bags in there to stay for one night. There may be other things that play into why they went in that room, but clearly I think witnesses probably helped them.
Thank goodness. All right, Brad, thank you.
They got there so quickly, but not before so many killed and injured. I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, right now. Of course, Cecilia, the president's been brief. We just saw his first statement.
Yeah, George, that first response from the White House came just after 7 o'clock this morning. As you just said, he has been briefed. This White House is monitoring this situation closely. Let me just tell you about this tweet that came from President Trump about 10 minutes ago. He says, quote, "My warmest condolences and sympathies to the victims and families of the terrible Las Vegas shooting. God bless you." The White House, we're being told, is offering, of course, its full support to local and state officials there. They are offering prayers for victims. George, as you know, the president is supposed to go to Puerto Rico tomorrow. It's unclear whether that trip still stands. He's got a very busy day here at the White House. We expect to hear from him a number of times on camera. I would not be surprised if he addresses this directly on camera today. But as you said, George, that fact ringing very true here. This is now the worst shooting in American history right now.
Yes, I'm certain we will hear from the president later. Cecilia Vega, thanks very much. I want to go now to Jake Owen, country singer Jake Owen, who I spoke with earlier this morning. He was performing at the festival. He witnessed the shooting. Thank goodness you're okay, but you were with a friend who did get hit?
Yeah, I was with my friend. She got hit, right shoulder. Yeah.
Is she okay?
I just talked to her family. I talked to her brother, and they told her that she's in stable condition at UMC.
Yeah, tell us how the scene unfolded from your perspective.
I mean, he described it pretty well. It sounded like, we all thought it was like fireworks going off on the strip. And, you know, it kept going and going. And, you know, when Jason Aldean kind of ran off stage, everybody started running. It was absolute chaos. And, you know, we're lucky we got out.
And how did you get out exactly? How far did you have to run?
I mean, we had to run a decent amount of distance. We actually had to hop a fence to get out. Luckily, there were people assisting people hopping over this wall that we hopped, and yeah, we're lucky we got out.
How long did it take you?
It took us probably about no less than 5 minutes.
So you and could you tell from where you were where the shots were coming from?
We knew they were coming from somewhere on the strip. It didn't sound like it was coming from inside of the venue. So it sounded like it was coming from closer to Las Vegas Boulevard.
Right, and then you were able to get to your car and really get far away from the scene. Where are you now?
Well, I had a friend pick me up at the hospital because the hospital is on lockdown. There's police everywhere. There's police in riot gear literally standing in front of the emergency room. My dad's actually a clergyman, and he tried to flash his credentials, and they wouldn't even let him in to check the status of my friend.
And Joe, your friend who was shot, at first you weren't even positive she was shot?
No, I wasn't sure at all. She kept complaining that she was hurt, and I felt up her whole body. I lifted up her shirt a little bit, and just to check to see if there was any wounds, and we didn't see anything. Once we got to the designated place we agreed to meet or to go to, we double-checked her again, and sure enough, we found a pretty large wound in her right shoulder. It was probably about 1.5 inches.
Inch and a half. Wow, that is an incredibly large wound, and it just a chaotic scene in those first moments, huh?
It was. I mean, when everybody started kind of running, it was. I mean, we hit the ground a couple times, probably on our way out. I mean, it was just chaos. It was a war zone.
A war zone, and then and from what we know, the shooter on the 32nd floor had just an open shot on the entire scene, as we're seeing it up on the screen right now. How far were you from the stage at first?
We were pretty close to the stage. I mean, I don't know how many feet we were away from the stage, but we were pretty close.
Well, thank goodness you're okay right now, Joe. Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope your friend is okay. We're sending her our best wishes. One of so many tough stories we heard overnight.
And war zone, that's a phrase that you're hearing over and over again. We have more eyewitness accounts now. Joining us live, Michelle Schmidt and her friend Wendy Reed. They were also at the concert during the shooting. Ladies, so glad that you're doing as well as you are. And Michelle, tell us, you run a merchandise booth. Tell us what you saw and what happened.
Yeah, we do country music festivals all the time, and I've always had in the back of my mind that something like this would happen. And what we experienced was all of a sudden these gunshots were going off, pop, 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 very fast. And I said, what the is going on? And people just started running and yelling and screaming. It was very confusing. It was chaotic, scary. I called my husband and I told him that I loved him and my little girl in case I didn't make it because we didn't know where they were. So we were just running and running. We went to the Hooters Hotel. Then we were told that there was a shooter coming that way. There was a lot of bad information. So I got to my truck. I had a hide key, and I got in, and I just drove the furthest away from the strip that I could. I picked up a grandma and a little girl, and the little girl was just asking if she was going to die. She was scared. And 2 other people I picked up too, and we brought him to somebody's house. We were safe.
Doing all that you can in that moment to help other people, and you've heard that over and over again. And Wendy, what was the situation like for you?
Well, we were just sitting at her boutique, and we heard a couple pops, and we're wondering, we didn't know that there'd be fireworks. And then people just started screaming and running, a stampede, and saying, somebody's shooting, somebody's shooting. So she told me to run, and we got separated, and so the shot stopped, and I had my son on the phone, and I looked back, and he started shooting again, and I could see the flashes from the Mandalay Bay, and I said, I see where it's coming, I see where it's coming. And he said, get out, get out. So I ran across the street to the Tropicana, where tons of other people were running as well, falling over, screaming for loved ones. Some were carrying wounded people, some were on the ground. It was pretty horrific. It was pretty. I never thought I would experience something like this.
No, nor should you or anyone. And Michelle, you were slightly injured in getting away.
Yeah, I got stampeded and I fell over a concrete barrier, but I haven't gone to the hospital because it's just swelling, and there's a lot of trauma cases, so I just don't want to.
Bless your heart.
Go there.
Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Let me ask you. You said earlier. You said in the back of your mind you worried like something like this might happen. Why did you think this could happen?
Because I do these events, and the security that is for these events, it's not there. They check your bags a minimum. Granted, this one was in a hotel, but there's just such an opportunity for somebody to do this in such a mass crowd and kill so many people at one time. And it's just the perfect storm for something like this to happen. And I'm really rethinking of what I'm going to be doing because I don't want to do this anymore. I'm scared.
All right, that's understandable. Michelle and Wendy, thank you. We're thinking of you and everyone there, and we send you our love and our absolute best. Thank you. Thank you both.
We're praying for everybody.
Yes, we will.
We all are praying for everybody right now. We are live all across the country. It's 7:30 here on the East Coast, but as I said, we're live all across the country covering the deadliest mass shooting in American history. It happened in Las Vegas last night, Country Music Festival. This was the moment when the shots rang out.
The second string hit, it got a little bit louder, a little bit deeper, and everybody started to turn around, run around. The performer even ran off the stage, him and his band, and like,
is that when you knew it was real?
Yeah, it was kind of right then and there. You know, everything hit the fan. You realize that it's not just fireworks. You know, something's actually going down.
And how did you then? You were pretty close to the stage. How did you get out?
It was kind of a mess. Everything that happened with my friend actually is kind of how I got out. When we turned around, we started